Welcome to the Franchise Woman podcast, where passion and purpose collide, profits are made, and relationships are forged. I'm Rebecca Monet, CEO and Chief Scientist at Zoracle Profiles, along with my co-host, community advocate, speaker, author, and entrepreneur, Tracy Kawa. Our special guests today are Gilbert, and please pronounce your name for me, Gilbert.
Saguid.
I always mess it up. Saguid. This is
Saguid.
Gilbert Saguid and his buddy Hector. And Hector, please pronounce your name for me also, hon.
Cabrera.
Cabrera. So Gilbert and Hector are joining us today on a special segment on veterans in franchising. So Gilbert is a franchise broker and the founder of Veterans Franchise Group, where he educates, empowers, and connects entrepreneurial-minded veterans with franchise business opportunities. Prior to Veterans Franchise Group, he founded a technical recruiting company and worked in the technical service industry as a sales rep, recruiter, service manager, and field engineer. Gilbert is a current leadership studies PhD student at the University of San Diego, a graduate of University of Southern California, Masters of Business for Veterans program, and is a prior commissioned Navy surface warfare officer and enlisted submarine nuclear mechanic. Hector is a co-founder of Troy CrossFit, founder of Faith Strong Inc., founder of MaidPro in San Diego, a former U.S. Border Patrol agent, a U.S. Air Force veteran, and a current active reservist. As a senior master sergeant in the United States Air Force, Hector is a non-commissioned officer in charge of the March Air Force Base Combat Arms Section. Hector conducted 3 tours in Iraq and support of Operation Iraq Freedom. As a business developer of Smith's Detection, Hector is innovating current detection technology designed for the DoD and the aviation sector into the urban security sector to prevent catastrophic events from occurring. As a doctoral candidate at the University of Southern California, Hector's dissertations research is focused on the root cause for the underrepresentation of Latinx community members in entrepreneurship. Wowza, guys, you both are so crazy impressive. What did we schedule? 3 hours for this, Tracy? Is it with these guys?
Should be enough.
Well, first and foremost, thank you both for your service to our country, right off the top, truly. This is such an interesting dynamic going on here between the two of you. From what I understand, you know each other from academia, and at the same time, Gilbert, I believe you were Hector's franchise broker, correct?
Yes.
So tell me about this interesting relationship between the two of you.
Yeah, Hector, I'll start. So Hector and I, we were business school students at University of Southern California for a really amazing program for veterans. It's an MBA for veterans specifically. And I spotted Hector out. He was this confident, very intelligent person that I wanted to get to know. And so we immediately started working together in our group projects. And I discovered franchising while I was a technical recruiter. And I knew that in business school, I wanted to create my business, Veterans Franchise Group. So it was great because, Hector was part of our group projects in marketing and entrepreneurship to really create this business. And then fast forward later, Hector, is in a place to be able to create and purchase a business. And I was his broker to educate him and coach him into, finding the right business.
That's awesome. You had your subject right in the class next to you.
Didn't know it was going to happen, but things happen for a reason, I believe.
Oh, so Hector, what a great experience for the both of you to be in that program where you got to participate in Gilbert creating this very business that he is now running, which then ultimately helped you find your business.
Yes, and something to speak on how I met Gilbert and the influence that he's had on me. When I first met Gilbert, he led with saying, "My name's Gilbert, not Gil. So please refer to me as Gilbert. And I still remember that. And it speaks volumes of who he is, right? He has that self-respect, but he says it with so much passion and integrity. So to me, I was instantly drawn to him. And to his credit, he's also a very intelligent person who embraces growth, not only intellectually, but as a person. We've worked on the project, like you mentioned. I still remember we did a really funny presentation that incorporated a movie, a cult favorite,
The Office Space.
And The Office Space. Yep. And that was great. And Gilbert and I both share a passion for managerial accounting, and we incorporated that into his business. And yes, it is. I wish had I known that I was going to be on this side, not that I would have put more passion into it, but I would have allowed myself to be maybe a customer that he was serving in his customer segment interviews.
That would have been fun. Yeah, hindsight is always 20/20, isn't it? Mm-hmm. And relationships start in some of the bizarrest ways. We really don't know when two people meet and we're in circumstances. It's not like we go, I'm going to make him my friend, right? It's a relationship that grows out of mutual respect. This was a mutual admiration society that you had for each other, mutual respect. And then you also began to discover you had mutual passion, specifically around veterans, specifically around making a difference, specifically around leadership. So Gilbert, can you talk a little bit more, because you've really focused on this leadership side and making a difference in people's lives. Can you tell us a little bit more?
Yeah, no, and that's a big reason why I took on taking a PhD program in leadership studies, because it's a subject that is very important to me. And leadership in the sense of really, it goes along with my passion, right? My passion, my commitment in my life is to empower military veterans in their next mission in life. And the reason for that is, I would say that I had, most people would say, man, you had a pretty rough transition because transition out of the military. So, somebody outside looking in would think that, okay, Gilbert, you're an educated person. You were both enlisted technician and also an officer leader. And coming out of the military, you had a really great opportunity of going into the tech world right off the bat, right? Everything looked great. I had great salary, life was amazing. But what I really struggled with when I got out was I felt dead inside. I was, there's this defining moment where I saw myself coming out of Starbucks, wearing my business professional attire, and just looking at myself, I'm like, what am I doing with myself? Years beforehand, I was doing really important things in this life that made a difference. Helping combat against, the terrorists and things like that in the Middle East and stuff like that, and taking care of my troops, to now just filing paperwork and making sure that I get to the, what I needed to do as a manager. And, it was a rough start into the civilian life, to the point where I even got called back into the military because I signed up to be a reservist because I missed it so much and I was lost as a civilian. Mm-hmm. So they took me away for about a year, went back into the Middle East. And then again, I had myself thinking, like, I don't want to be in the military anymore. I want to go back to my normal job. So always chasing that dream of something was always better than the other side, right? Mm-hmm. And then quickly coming back into corporate America, it was even worse because I was even more lost, because I was like, okay, well, I thought the military was fine. I'm back. I'm not really liking it. I don't know what I'm doing. And, it was just a downward spiral, and to the point where I actually got demoted in my job, that I got quickly promoted when I got back from the military. And so there was a defining moment where there was just a level of depression, of just being lost, of not knowing what I was going to do. And, I was one of the fortunate ones. I still had all my limbs. I didn't get shot at in combat, but there was just this aspect that I was still lost as a military veteran. And so when it comes to passion, a defining moment for me was really understanding what was important to me, really. And a lot of that was creating a next mission in life where, hey, it wasn't all about just getting money. It wasn't about being, in the C-suite, because ultimately that was what everybody strives for. And a lot of that had to do with my ego, right? Of what I deserved and I should have had. And when I was able to be grateful for everything that I've had, that all the hiccups in my life, the demotions or promotions, all the things were just lessons learned. And when I got into the state of just being grateful, gratitude of my, the ones that I loved in my life and things like that, things really have changed for me and allowed me to grow, to develop myself and take on other things in life, such as entrepreneurship and whatnot. So to answer your long story short, this is my passion to be able to educate and empower other veterans to maybe take a shortcut in what I did.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And I think what you said about being very mission driven, coming out of the military, I'm quite sure that this is how veterans feel. And like you said, some are even coming out without their limbs or having been scarred in other ways. How do you think that you make that transition easier for other veterans? Like, what do you think that difference is with your own growth that you can then impart on?
Yeah. Well, that's really great, because a lot of it, what I do as a broker is I relate a lot of our experience and skills in the military and how it applies still as a civilian, right? Any mission that we have, and Hector can correlate to this, any mission we have, we have this brief, we have a presentation, we understand exactly what our mission is, right? How we execute it, what support we're going to need, either be people and resources and things like that. We mitigate our risk. We actually create a mix, a risk matrix to understand that, hey, we do inherently dangerous things. We still got to accomplish the mission, but how do we mitigate those catastrophes, right? And then we take that leap of faith and do what we need to do. Well, when we get out of the military, we sometimes forget all that, right? Or we don't know how to relate it to what we do. And that's how I like to coach and educate my veterans, is that, hey, there's a lot of things that we learned that were pretty amazing. A lot of the soft skills and hard skills that we learned in the military, we can definitely apply that, just knowing how to apply it.
Awesome.
Even that whole idea of, I've come out of the military, I'm looking at a business, and my mission right now is to find the right business for myself. And then the other component you talked about that you learned in the military, which is, okay, there are risks involved. What do we need to do to mitigate that? That process is the same when looking for businesses. Here's the mission. Here's what I want this business to do. Here are the potential risks, and here's what we can do to help mitigate it. So there is a lot of crossover in that process. I like how you articulate it.
Absolutely, especially as scary as it is, right, to start a business, and the statistics that are all out there of business failures and whatnot. And that's why I have a passion and connection with franchising, because I really do see the perfect fit, right? That yes, starting a business can be scary. There's a lot on the line of the hundreds of thousands of dollars that you can invest, right? So how do you mitigate that catastrophe? What controls can you put in place? Well, you get to understand a lot about the business, how it works, and the costs and how many failures there have been in the business. And that's, by looking at a franchise. But most importantly, what I like is being able to match up people's internal value systems, their internal risk tolerance, their passions, what their business acumen, what they're great at doing. Because just because you love, let's say, churros, as a consumer, doesn't mean it's going to be the perfect. Oh, they're so good, aren't they? Doesn't mean it's the perfect business for you, right? Because what might be important for you is a little more time freedom, definitely a lot more financial freedom, and be able to flex whatever business acumen muscles that you can flex in a business. That's actually might be the best business for you, and that could look like something completely different from the churros that you like.
You're speaking our language, Gilbert. Hector, I'd like to switch over to you for a minute, because you have your own story of evolution. Tell us a little bit. You're a business builder. You're an ongoing perpetual student. You're a student of life. Tell us a little bit about your own evolution that you've been through.
Certainly, and not to get too academic here, but I'll lean on some theory so that it's founded on something. So in motivation theory, there's something that we academics call triadic reciprocity. And what triadic reciprocity is, it's a triangle, and it has a lot to do with motivation. And on each end of that triangle, you have the person's beliefs, self-efficacy. Then on the other end of the triangle, you have the person's actions. And then lastly, their environment.
Mhm.
And if one of those items is missing, then that person won't have the motivation to continue to grow and move into a different state, right? Or something that they might be working towards. And the reason why I use that, for me, I'm an immigrant to this country. I was raised by a single mother, and I, from a very young age, right? So when you look at passion and purpose, have always been passionate, and my purpose has always been to help. And that was born because I'm the oldest of 3 kids. When mom was off working and bringing food back to the home, I was charged with raising my brother and my sister. So for me, that purpose was always helping my siblings, helping people. I grew up in church, and I just got back from a trip in Chicago, and it was a great trip for so many reasons. When I was 14, I was part of a youth group that traveled and ministered in different cities, and Chicago was one of the cities that I traveled to. And I was part of a drama team where we had skits that we performed, and then at the end we had an altar call where we prayed for people and we guided them to Jesus. So for me, I've always had a sense of helping others from the faith perspective. As I got older, I understood that I wanted to educate myself. I was an English as a second language student. And so at an early age, I was very limited in the courses that I could take in school. I remember at one point, my freshman year, I was frustrated because I knew that I had the intellectual prowess, if you will, to take on AP courses. But because I was an ESL student at an early age, the system didn't allow me to leave ESL.
Oh, wow.
As I've gotten older, the 30,000 foot view, now that I understand that education, unfortunately, is a business. If they lost my number, right, they would also lose funds. Mm-hmm. So at the same time, yes, they wanted to help me, but at the same time, they didn't want to lose the funding that was received by having an ESL student in that course. Mm-hmm. When I graduated high school, I went off to college, and this is where the military comes in. I went off to college. I was a postal boy, if you will, or a postman, and a janitor. And I put myself through my first semester of freshman year college, and September 11th occurred. Now, September 11th, I remember I was vacuuming the hall, and my classmates were surrounding a television that was there, and I saw the plane strike the building live. And I knew right there and then that I had to do something about it. I had this innate sense to give back to this country that had given at that point so much to my family and I. I enlisted in the military. And I always tell the story that I joined the Air Force, but I didn't know that there were different branches in the military. I showed up and I thought there was one branch, right? And I was supposed to be a Marine, but my Marine recruiter didn't show up that morning. The night prior was the Marine Corps ball. And needless to say, he was hungover. And I heard a faint voice from the end of the hall. And the recruiter said, "Hey, do you want to join the Air Force?" I said, "Sure." So I joined the Air Force. And to Gilbert's point, and what Gilbert does, I took on a new identity. I was a military member. And when I left active duty, I knew that I wanted to continue to serve. I just didn't know how. Growing up in a small town, I saw law enforcement personnel and I saw military veterans or military members, and they were the only ones thriving. They had a nice home, they drove a nice car. So I thought, okay, I've got to join law enforcement and continue to serve. So I did. I applied at several agencies, got hired by all of them, and selected the United States Border Patrol, mainly because I was coming back to San Diego, and this is my dream city. All right, that was the kicker. So once I transitioned to the Border Patrol, again, to Gilbert's point, I had a new identity, and I missed that paramilitary environment, the structure, right? The sense of belonging, the sense of service. I took 2 years off from the military service and then joined a reserve unit, much like Gilbert did. And I wanted to continue that. And the reason why I did that, I'm someone that is committed. And I think in America, speaking for all of us, we see a 20-year service to anything as a lifetime, right? Much like the way we sentence people in jail, it's a lifetime of servitude. I see it as 20 years, not so much because of a retirement benefit or whatnot. I just see it as a sense of committing to something. So I said, all right, we're going to do 20 years for this country, rain or shine, we're doing it. So we're 2 years shy of completing that commitment, and I have had an amazing journey. Now, when there was a pinnacle point in my life when I said, all right, I want to continue to serve. I'm helping people in law enforcement and I've helped in the military, but I want to own a business that helps people. And I looked at the fitness industry. I was passionate about fitness. And I said, okay, my passion from a business standpoint, right, is fitness. And my purpose is to continue to help these people. And I have so many stories. I helped countless people lose 50, 100 pounds. Jay Alanis is a great individual. He is a Air Marine agent. And we developed a friendship because he lost 120 pounds with me. And he's able to run and he's able to enjoy his children and he has his health back. But that's just one example of the many that I helped. Now, the way Gilbert and I met, where grad school came in, I said, okay, back to that triadic reciprocity. I've done all this, but I want to continue to grow. How do I continue to grow in the sense of growing? I said, well, I have to go back to school. I can Google things, but I'm going to be lost. I need direction. I started looking at MBA programs, and USC came into play because when I was a kid, I grew up watching Rudy, and hence why my trip to Chicago was so important this week. And I went to a Notre Dame USC game. I grew up watching Rudy, the movie. And in that movie, Notre Dame plays USC in the background. And at a yard sale, I found a USC hat. Now, another reason why I'm drawn to it was my name, Hector. I was ridiculed in elementary, right? I was a Hispanic, so kids poke fun at Mexicans, right? In that spectrum, and they said, "Oh, your name's Juan. Oh, you're Hector," and oh, it's such a Mexican name. And as a young kid, I looked for meaning. I thought, okay, wait, my name's got to mean something. And I found Hector of Troy, who was a hero in a sense, right? And USC, right, founded by it's based on Trojans, and Hector was Troy's greatest warrior. So that was the connection between myself and USC. I found the veteran aspect of an MBA, or the veteran program rather, and I was drawn to it immediately. And that's where Gilbert and I met. And to answer your question, Tracy, so for me, that growth theme, I've continued to grow in each and every single portion of my life, from high school to military, law enforcement, to education, and now as a business owner. And I hope that answers your question.
It really does, because it kind of begins to uncover this theme that, of course, is driven by a desire to grow, a desire to serve, a bit of a duty bound you, right? Whether it's to mom and siblings, whether it's to the country, whatever it is, there's a part of you that is about service and duty. If you could encapsulate in a sentence, if that's even possible, the theme of your life, this is what seems to be repeating yourself. How would you describe that theme? This is going to be the title of your book, by the way, when you write it.
I have something. It's not a theme, but it is my motto. And my motto is, I want to accomplish my American dream by helping others accomplish theirs. So that's the motto from which I draw inspiration.
Yeah, that's great.
Which, Gilbert, in many ways, you're doing also, right? Helping others find their American dreams, veterans in particular.
Yes. And I want to share also my my sentence or what what Hector shared. Mine is all about gratitude, authenticity, and vulnerability as an access to achieve what your dreams, right? And that's what's really helped me be able to achieve my dreams as a business owner and in life. And so, yes, what's interesting about veterans when we transition out of the military, we have months, even years of learning how to be a tactical or technical expert in the military. When we get out, everybody is very reluctant to have you leave. They lose your paperwork when you request to leave, even though it's your time. And also, you get about 2 weeks of training of how to be a civilian. And really, that 2 weeks where you're still looked down upon for even going because they need you at work, you learn how to write a resume, how to maybe sometimes interview, but most importantly, they just spend a lot of time on how to utilize your veteran benefits and access it. So there's just something off in that process, right? And they're getting a little better now. They're creating these internships and things like that, which is amazing. But I remember when I got out, there were only 2 options: either go back to school, which I had no intention of doing when I got out of the military, or go get a job, right? And I think back of, hey, I'd never been around any entrepreneurial people. My parents, they just retired a couple of years ago and worked 30 plus years at their same job here in the States. And it was just never ingrained in me that it was even possible. And what I do is I educate veterans and show them that it is absolutely possible, right? And with just school or work, business is available. But a lot of times in academia and some of these nonprofits, they share the idea of like, hey, come up with an idea, get seed money, create this, amazing business that's going to change the world with your app. But what if you just wanted to use your leadership skills and your ability to follow a process and have the things that you want in life, such as, like I say, time freedom and financial freedom eventually? That's very possible in a franchise business. And a lot of us veterans don't know how much it costs, what it looks like, that there's actually things outside of having a Subway that's a business. And that's what I'm passionate about, like educating people about it. And it's been a very fulfilling business for me.
Yeah, not everybody's wired to be an entrepreneur, right?
Yes.
Tracy, I'm sorry, I talked right over you.
No. It's great. It's great. I think you just touch on so many really good points, and about using our skills and I heard something once that we can't all be the great heroes, right? Life is filled with everyday heroes. Like my grandfather, who was a doorman, and I don't know how he stood at a door for 20 something years or however long it was, but those are the unsung heroes, the untold heroes. And I love how you say that, not everybody wants to do but maybe some people want to do this over here, or use their skills for business ownership, or use their skills for, to make some kind of, maybe not sell a .com overnight, but to do this instead. So having said that, I would love to hear a little bit about Hector's reverse migration from government into corporate, and then
Into franchising.
And then into predominantly a female-owned franchise concept. I think that's fascinating. And we are the women's franchise show. So
Yeah, no, I'd love to share. Yes, so I love that terminology. So for me, again, it comes back to that growth trend in my life that you spoke of, and that triadic reciprocity, where I gained the self-efficacy through education for me, right? Going through my MBA with Gilbert and having Gilbert as a friend. And before I would be doing this story, or I wouldn't give it full justice if I didn't bring up how Gilbert and I came to be. Gilbert knew that I was a business owner. We worked together on his business in school, but he never once wanted to cross any lines, and he never really imposed his business on me. And he just listened, and he would hand me a few cents and say, hey, maybe you should maybe look away from brick and mortar. And I would call Gilbert and we discuss some entrepreneur ideas that I had. And one day I woke up and I said, it dawned on me. I said, wait, I've never thought about a franchise. And one of my best friends in life places veterans in franchises. And I reached out to Gilbert. I said, hey, Gilbert, I'd love to look at the franchise side. And he smiled and he said, great, I'd love to help you. I was praying for the day that you'd come to me and ask for my help. And that started that conversation. And I'll go back to the law enforcement side. The law enforcement side, to Gilbert's point, oftentimes we become institutionalized. And when it's very much like the military, a lot of errands in law enforcement, specifically in the Border Patrol here in San Diego. And when we're in this circle as veterans, and it's something I discussed with a group of veterans recently, oftentimes we don't like to see our friends succeed. And the reason why is because we get down on ourselves. We think, wait, maybe I'm not good enough, or I'm not doing that. So you tend to keep them in your circle and say, no, it's scary out there. Stay here. This is safe. This is a safe environment. I got to a place where I looked at it and said, this is great. I'm doing great work here with the United States Border Patrol, and I'm helping a lot of people. But I know that I can do so much more if I could just buy some of my time back. And when I looked at corporate America and working remotely, working from home, I had a new sense of value. When I finally put my resume out in the world and I started looking at companies, and I thought to myself, wait a minute, my skills are worth this, and I can actually transition and go into the corporate world. It was never a thought that I had. So it was scary. I'm not going to lie to you. I lost I had many sleepless nights, and I woke up in sweats because I thought, oh my goodness, I'm letting go of the pension and all these other, it's a safe environment. But I made the leap, and I'm in a place now. I've been with the company now for the past 6 months. It's been a 6-month transition. Well, I've transitioned 6 months ago. And Gilbert and I were looking for a franchise. Gilbert does a great job at finding the veterans' skills, whether they're tacit or soft, hard skills, and in presenting the veteran with a choice of franchises and then narrowing it down. And the reason why the Maid industry spoke to me is, again, goes back to my mother. And not only my mother, it's funny how everything ties in together. While working on my doctorate, we conduct research. And one of the things that I started researching into is the success of women in corporate America. And that was one of my research topics that I worked on, right? And how limited they are. And then I continued to dig deeper, and I thought, wait a minute. And I found out through my research that women are the best employees anyone could ask for so many reasons. So when Gilbert and I found that MaidPro, the franchise, I sat down and thought, okay, how does this tie into my life, and how can I apply purpose and passion to this? Well, in 2019, I had a deployment, and my Proverbs 31 mother, who I speak so highly of, died in her sleep while I was deployed. She had a brain aneurysm, and it was one of the hardest times of my life, being deployed and receiving those news. And it's something that I hope, and I don't wish that on anybody, but I especially don't wish it on any troop that's deployed to the Middle East. You're alone, and yes, you are with your teammates, but it's hard, and it's the worst 48 hours of your life. Not sleeping, traveling from country to country, and then ultimately getting home. And it's just, not only is it a shock emotionally, but you're also going from being in Iraq to being in Los Angeles in a matter of 48 hours.
Wow.
And there's a transition that has to occur between the two. But I thought to myself, how can I help that demographic of women? In my research, 89% of the employees, especially specifically in Southern California, in the maid industry, are women. Of those 89% employees, 90% of them are single mothers. And of that 90%, 75% are immigrants here in Southern California. So when I looked at it, I said, hey, Gilbert, this is where I want to be. I want to give back, and not just monetary. I don't want to just give back pay. I want to create an organization and a culture that lifts these women up. And by offering them college classes, offering them flexible hours, work hours, increasing their pay, giving them benefits and workman's comp, and then also helping their children by bringing them in and exposing them to mentors that I have, or Gilbert, and have, bring your kid to work day and give them a sense of belonging and provide for them. So for me, it's far more than just a business. It's a way to help a specific demographic and the children that they are mothering.
Wow. I can hardly contain myself here. So it's what's amazing is you chose a female dominated business, MaidPro, and it speaks to this passion and purpose side of you, the desire to make a difference, this immigrant side, the single parent, your mom that raised you, and this whole idea of lifting women up, especially single women and immigrants, in a business that allows you to do that, bringing in your leadership skills, bringing in your education, all at the same time. So Gilbert, was MaidPro the first kind of idea you put to head? How did you know that this would be? I mean, I honestly, I'm like, how did you even think about MaidPro rather than some other business that could make a difference, right? Like elder care or some other kind of business.
Well, Hector, I would say, is the perfect example of the type of professional leadership, a professional relationship I want with my clients. Not only just, understanding his qualifications financially and personally, and his goals and everything, but really getting to know him at a deeper level that I was able to, even prior to Veterans Franchise Group, right? Understand his history, his strong values, such that, with your Zorkel assessment, he's a very strong societal, right?
Yeah.
And so looking at like, okay, well, we looked at the senior care business. We were looking at other businesses in the service industry that he can give back at a higher level. But then when we looked at it, I knew Hector was a very smart guy, business school, a prior business owner. I also had to look at the hard technical side of the business, right? The financials, the success rate, and the people and the culture of the organization. And so, my first year as being a broker, maybe a big part of it was because of the pandemic and I had the extra time to understand the franchises, but really going into the deep dive with all the franchisors to understand, hey, what is going to be a great fit for him personally, right? Because I've known other people, not necessarily my client, but a good friend of mine. He jumped on a franchise because they gave him a 50% off on his franchise fee because they love veterans, right? Well, fast forward 4 years later, he realized that he hated what he was doing. He hated the business was sustaining, but he just didn't like what he did every single day, right? And he eventually sold it for a profit. But I didn't want that to happen for Hector or for any of my other future clients. So a lot of that has to be that right match of your culture, of your values, of everything, on top of also the financial side of things. So that's how I found MaidPro, because getting to know them, they're people, but especially the way that the business is structured. That the business is structured where they handle 95% of the sales and operations and marketing. And what makes people successful in that business is that they get that, they understand that, but it's more of an HR component of, and he ranked very high in the Zorkel in HR because it's all about hiring the right people and developing them, because MaidPro will find you the sales. It's more of, can you keep the people that you hire happy, right? To stay with you and to do a good job so you can maintain your customers. And that's why I thought it would be a great fit for Hector.
Makes total sense. And Hector, not only was this your skill set, where you're good at recognizing talent and mentoring and growing that talent, but it lined right up with this purpose that comes from all the way back to childhood of wanting to serve and wanting to empower, and in this case, empower woman. So how's it going now? You're in the business. Are you enjoying it? Are you having fun? Tell us some great fun stories.
So right now I'm in the process of launching. I should be launching in January, but there is already a process. Today I went and looked at what should be our facility. I loved it, did the walkthrough, but more importantly, I brought on my operations manager, and my operations manager, her name is Sharon Rios. She is a female entrepreneur here in San Diego, California. She is a force to be reckoned with. She created her own business. It's called Esteemed Movers. It's a moving business. And I met Sharon because I needed a moving company 8 years ago. And Sharon and my mother fell in love as friends, right? They were best friends. Like, Hector, I'm coming up to see Sharon. I was like, great, Mom. Sounds good. You're going to come see the person that moved me. Awesome. But Sharon and I never really developed a friendship. It was more of a business exchange. When my mother passed, Sharon was gracious. Oh my goodness, she donated so much to the family and to her memory or celebration of life, if you will. And Sharon and I connected, and I shared with Sharon that I shared my vision with Sharon. When Gilbert connected MaidPro, myself and MaidPro, I thought to myself, wait a minute, I know who my operations manager is going to be, and I need Sharon by my side. And I spoke to Sharon. I said, hey, Sharon, I'm opening this business. I need an operations manager. I know that you don't have a lot of time to give, but I'd love to have you as part of my business in any capacity. She said, Hector, undoubtedly. And she knew that I'm dedicating this business to my mother. So to Gilbert's point, the culture, it's a people-based business. And I heard a statistic recently that the turnover in the maid industry is 300%. And I laughed at that. And I said, great, my turnover rate is going to be less than 25%. And in talking to some of the current franchise owners and future franchise owners and recent franchisees in a meeting this week, I had an opportunity to speak up. That we were talking about recruiting and how we recruit people, and everyone was talking. An individual said, well, I can't throw a $20 bill at somebody. Nobody wants to work. Everyone's lazy. And I said, and when I finally spoke, I said, let's work in reverse. I said, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You as a business owner have your own needs. When you understand what your business has to produce in order for your basic needs to be met, only then can you determine what your pay is. And that's not even talking managerial accounting. That's just talking you as a person. And if your basic needs are $50,000, if that's your basic need wherever you are, then that means everything else is overhead, direct or indirect, marketing, etc. Then and only then can you say, okay, now I can afford to pay this person or a new prospect X amount of money. Mm-hmm. Now, why does the money matter? The money matters because if you can reach a certain demographic and pay them $24, $4 versus $20, right? $4 difference. To someone in that demographic, those $4 might mean the difference between having to work 2 jobs and having 1. And once that basic need is met, now your focus shouldn't be in the pay anymore. It should be in the organization that you have, the culture. What do you do as a leader? Do you empower your worker, right? Do they trust you? Do you build relationships with them? And that's how you retain your workers. So for me, that was huge for me in hearing that, and to Gilbert's point, understanding that this is a people-based business. So although I haven't launched, Sharon and I have a vision. Yes, we have a vision. We've already started setting some processes in place, and we're excited. We can't wait to open our doors mid-January.
Wow. Tracy, can you talk a little bit, because you're kind of a specialist in this area of culture and human resources and team building and all of that. And Hector, of course, has some strength in that area. I like how Hector is thinking, that he's not buying this narrative that there's no workers out there. You're not buying it. You're saying there's a way around that. Tracy, what are your thoughts on all of that?
I can't help but think that when we were building the orthodontic office originally, right, my mind goes back like 20 something years, and we were hiring, and it really didn't matter what the starting pay was. It was about the culture. It was about how we were treating the people. I'll give you an example. The woman that went on to become our main office manager for 10 years started out as my personal assistant for 15 hours a week for $8 an hour. She ended up running our company because I explained to her what my need was at the time. I didn't say, oh, I can't afford you right now. I told her exactly what my need was. I was very transparent. And I think that when it comes to organizations, when we talk about transparency, so that everyone in the organization understands what the goal is, what the vision is, what the mission is, and they can all partake in the culture, which I allowed everyone to do. I had them build the culture with me. When you open the doors to that type of collaboration, that's where I think Hector was spot on, where there's a collaboration, there's teamwork, there are people that will literally stay with you through thick and thin, just like our interview last week, Rebecca, with the franchisee who owns eight facilities, and she was telling us that
Starting the ninth.
starting her ninth, during COVID, she was receiving letters from her employees stating that, listen, I don't care if you can't pay me for the next several months, I'm staying, because they knew her heart was in it. And if she couldn't afford it for whatever reason, it was because she couldn't, not because she wouldn't.
Didn't want to, which goes back to Gilbert, your point about the mission. If our employees understand there's a bigger mission here, and Hector is very clear on what his mission is, which is around empowering women and providing opportunity and edifying them. But it's about that clarity of mission, not just in our own lives, but then later with those that we employ or we work with. So it goes right back to where you started this conversation, Gilbert. Wow. Okay. As I said, I thought this was going to be a 3-hour conversation, but we cannot do that. Guys, this has been the most incredible conversation. Before we kind of wrap up, is there anything that I should have asked, Tracy should have asked, that we didn't ask that you think would be valuable to our listeners that are primarily women and veterans also? Gilbert, do you have any kind of final words, thoughts, as someone is considering business ownership, that would be useful to us right now?
Yeah, so I would say to just ask questions, right? And don't be afraid to ask questions. There's so much about business ownership, especially franchising, that us veterans just don't know enough about, right? And it's just those things that we don't know that could really provide us access to achieving those dreams, but we won't know unless we ask. And a lot of that is, as veterans, a lot of times we have very big egos and we don't want to seem vulnerable. We don't want to seem weak or not knowing, and just put that aside and ask a question. Ask people like myself or people in the industry, hey, how did you get there? What did you do? And the biggest thing that I learned from business school is asking somebody to do an informational interview. Asking that person that's actually doing the thing that you want to do for maybe 30 minutes for coffee, to just get an understanding of how they got to where they're at, right? You're not asking for a job, you're not asking them for anything. And anybody that is successful in life is going to be more than happy if they have the time to give back and share with them, your story.
Excellent advice. Thank you, Gilbert. And Hector, from your perspective, what would you tell our listeners that are women, that are maybe even veterans that are considering business ownership?
There's a couple of things that come to mind, and I'll share something that I've recently learned from and grown from. The first I'll talk about is Gary Vaynerchuk is someone that people might know. If you don't, great individual who shares a lot of insight into entrepreneurship. And he said something for veterans, and he said most veterans revert back to what they know because they don't give themselves enough time to learn something new. And that pretty much encapsulates the fear of leaving, the fear of going into the unknown. Give yourself the opportunity to grow. Give yourself the opportunity to fail. It's not a failure. You're a mounting experience. Now, from the business side, specifically to women that aren't necessarily veterans, I'll say this. And to Tracy's point about organizational culture, vision, and mission, once you've decided to open a business, you have to learn how to do that. And there's a book, The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. It's a great book, great read. It's an instructional book on how to create a team environment, a thriving team environment. And lastly, when I opened my CrossFit gym in 2016, you could take a rock and hit a CrossFit gym in San Diego. They were everywhere. People thought I was crazy. They said, Hector, you're opening a CrossFit gym? Are you crazy? And I opened it right down the street from one of the most popular CrossFit gyms, Invictus CrossFit. And I said, yes. And they said, Hector, what makes you think you're going to succeed? I said, we're going to add more value. We're going to provide a place with childcare, a sense of belonging. We're going to take our 60-minute class and turn it into a 70-minute class. Why? Because we're offering free myofascial release sessions, and we're going to prolong our athletes' lives. So we're going to add value to the rate that they're paying. Similarly, with the maid industry, are there maid industry companies here in San Diego? Yes, there are. But the difference between myself and those companies is that we're helping you by fixing a pain point, and that's giving you time back by allowing us to clean your place. What you're doing in return is not only giving us business, but you're helping MaidPro San Diego empower the women and the employees that work for MaidPro San Diego by employing us as your maid business or maid service directly. So you are making a difference in the employees' lives at MaidPro San Diego.
And you know, as a customer, I need to know that I really am making a difference. So I like that you are clarifying that you're not just hiring some women, but you are truly making a difference in their lives. And my beautiful co-host, Tracy, what are your final thoughts?
My final thoughts have to do with something that Gilbert said a little earlier about putting your ego aside. I just want all of our viewers and listeners to know that I am sensing absolutely zero ego in this room. I'm sensing pure beingness and pure intention. And I think that's why these two young men are super successful, because we know when we operate from intention and from beingness, that is where the universe brings it back, and that's where we manifest from. So I applaud you both for the work you do, and I appreciate both of you immensely.
Thank you.
Thank you. Finally, Gilbert, how will folks get hold of you? What's the best way to connect with you and learn more about what you're up to and possibly be looking at a franchise?
Yes, absolutely. So I work primarily with veterans, but I can work with anybody. And you can reach me at my website, veteransfranchisegroup.com, and veterans is plural. And there you can schedule a time to come talk to me. My contact info is on there as well. And I got some really fun videos on there to learn a little bit about franchising and also about myself.
Excellent. Thank you, gentlemen. Really appreciate your insights. This was absolutely fabulous. And for the rest of you listening in today, thanks for joining us on the Franchise Woman podcast, where passion and purpose collide, profits are made, and relationships are forged. And this is a beautiful example of a relationship that was forged, and profits are being made, and passion and purpose is expressing itself. So for more of that, tune in next week.